All right, what's up, Math 8? Today we are going to talk about deriving y equals mx plus b. We are on, in your books, page 203. So go ahead and get to page 203 real quick. This is the try it problem. So what I want you to do for this video, I am okay with you working with somebody else as we go through this video. Provided it's just two of you. If you are in class watching this, make sure that means you probably each have one headphone in or earbud, I guess. And you should be working, you need to be on task with that person. Obviously, be respectful of the people around you and of the substitute teacher as well. But go ahead and get started on this. Again, page 203. I want you to go ahead and try out the try it problem here. It says Ramona has a new job as a chef. She earns the same amount per hour as she did in her old job, plus she got a $100 sign-on bonus. Line P represents Ramona's earnings in her old job. Line Q represents her earnings in her new job. Write an equation for line P. What does the slope mean? How can you use the equation for line P to write an equation for line Q? Okay, so there's a few different things there. The first thing you need is an equation for line P. And if you look at line P, you should notice where it starts. And that should look really familiar to what we did last class. So that's just a little bit to help you get started on this. So you're going to have to find line P. You need to tell what the slope is, and I'd like to know what it means as well. And then the last part, how can you use how can you use the equation for line P to write an equation for line Q? So I'm just going to put line Q here. Okay, so those are the three things you need to do on this page. So go ahead and pause the video at this point. Talk with the person you're working with, unless you're working alone, obviously. But spend maybe 5 minutes working through this try it problem for me. All right, so you hopefully had a chance to do those things. Just real quick, I'm going to get us kind of what we hopefully got on the first couple of parts, and then the line Q part we're actually going to save. We won't really worry about doing on the try it problem together, but hopefully you were able to get something down there and kind of put your ideas on here. Remember, we talked about your try it problems. I don't care necessarily if you're getting the problem exactly right, but I do care that you are trying the problem and doing your best effort on it. So equation for line P, if we look at that, you can see it goes through the origin right there. Okay, it goes through 0, 0, which means it's going to be in the form y equals mx. That's what we talked about last class. Okay, so last lesson we talked about y equals mx, and then hopefully you remember that m is your slope. So we are going to find our slope. The best way, I think, is going to be to count rise over run. If you wanted to do the slope by picking two ordered pairs and then using your slope formula, you absolutely could. For me, I'm going to go with 0, 0, and then I can see at 440, we cross straight through those grid lines with line P. So my rise goes from 0 to 40. That is a rise. Let me write down rise over run first. That is a rise of 40, since we went from 0 to 40, and a run of 0 to 4, which is 4. Okay, so you should have gotten 10 for your slope. You can use that to write this equation, the y equals mx, but instead of m, you should have written 10. So you got y equals 10x should be your equation for line P. Okay, your slope was 10. And then as far as what that means if we look at your x and y axis, we've got time worked in hours. We've got your amount earned in dollars there. So that means, since it's y equals 10x, means for every hour, which is our x value, Ramona will earn $10, and that would be your Y value. Okay, so something along those lines. If you didn't write exactly that, if you wrote something else, that is totally fine. Okay, but that's kind of what we're looking at here when we talk about slope. Okay, and then like I said, we're going to move on past line Q. So go ahead and move on to the next, page of your book for me real quick. All right, so I'm on page 204 here in the book, and you can see the model it. We're still kind of talking about the same problem. From the model it says you can use a transformation to map line P onto line Q. The slopes of the lines are equal since the earnings per hour at each job are the same, and the lines are parallel, right? So I think we mentioned last class that parallel lines are going to have the same slope. The y-coordinates of the point where a line meets or crosses the y-axis is called the y-intercept. Okay, this is a really important concept. Okay, the y-intercept is the y-coordinate where a line meets or passes through the y-axis. So that would be right here on line Q. You can see that's where it hits the y-axis. And reminder, here's your y-axis, right? It's this whole line. Okay, so that is a big deal, big idea here. Okay, and you can see the y-intercept for this one is 100 because it's right there. Here's 80, here's 120. Okay, if you couldn't see that, here's 80, here's 120. This is right in between, right in the middle. So that's going to be 100 for the y-intercept. All right, the analyze it. You can write the equation for line P in the form y equals mx, right? So just like we did last class, line P, that's the blue line that goes through the origin, can be written in the form y equals mx, okay? It says line P represents earnings at the old job. 0, 0, and 220 are both ordered pairs on line P. Right here, 0, 0, 220 is right here. And then you can see they use the slope formula to go ahead and solve to get 10, which is obviously what we got in the try it problem as well. And then their equation y equals 10x. Again, that's what we got there. Okay, here's the next big part here. The equation for line Q should include the hourly earnings at the new job plus the sign-on bonus. Okay, when we talk about that number there, you're going to notice this is always going to be something that is only going to be added on once, right? So if you were to get a job and you have a sign-on bonus, you get that bonus one time, and that is when you sign your contract for that job. Okay, that's kind of what's going on here. So that's where this new equation, y equals 10x, right? That's the old jobs equation, line P, plus an extra $100 for the sign-on bonus. Okay, and there's your equation for line Q. If we go on to the next page, now we're looking at the connected problems on page 205. It says use the problem from the previous page to help you understand how to derive y equals mx plus b. If we look at 1a, describe how to map line P onto line Q. And then B, what does the y-intercept of line Q represent? I want you to look at the model it from page 204. So up here with your partner, I want you to talk through number 1A and number 1B. And then pause the video first, then talk through 1A and 1B. Write down your answers, and then you guys can resume the video from there. All right, so 1A, describe how to map line P onto line Q. This might have been tricky wording. It's something we haven't really talked about. But when we say map it, we're talking about like how do we get it kind of in the same spot. So really what we're doing there is we're taking line P and we're going to move every point up. Right, so move every point of line P up by 100. Okay, that would kind of do what you're looking for here. If we go back and we look at that original graph, see how we have plus 100 here, plus 100 here, right? any point, because those two lines are parallel, anytime we move them all up by 100 or any of them up by 100, you're going to end up on that line Q, which I think is pretty cool. And that's kind of how parallel lines work. Part B says, what does the y-intercept of line Q represent? If we look again, remember your y-intercept is where it hits the y-axis. So that was at 100. That would be the representation of your sign-on bonus. Okay, so your sign-on bonus, if you want to add that it was $100, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so that's kind of it for number one. If you look at number two, it says, look at analyze it. How are the equations for Ramona's earnings at the old job and the new job alike? How are they different? Go ahead, same thing. Take a couple minutes, pause the video, talk about it with your partner, get something written down for each of those, same and different, and then you can unpause the video. All right, so hopefully I had a chance to do that for number two. When we look at the two jobs, the way that they're the same, you should have something on the lines of you earn, Ramona earns $10 per hour, okay, at each job. And I'm actually going to erase what I just put because I want to actually write down the word per. And the reason is I like to tell people when you see that word per right here, that tells you it's going to be your slope. Okay, that's going to be your slope for an equation. All right, so M would be that one. Okay. When you look at where those equations are different, I think the big one there is that Ramona has a signing bonus. I'm going to put a $100 signing bonus. At her new job. Okay. If you put other things, if you noticed other things that are the same or other things that are different, that's fine. Those are probably the two that we really want to make sure we find, though. Okay. Definitely want to know that there is the $100 signing bonus, and that's what makes them different. But at the same time, the hourly pay is still the same. Okay. Next one, we're going to look at number three. A linear equation describes a straight line, right? We talked about this a little bit previously in another chapter. That word linear has the word line in it. That's not by accident, right? Linear just means that it's a straight line. Okay. And straight line right there. It can be written in slope-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Don't ask me why b is the letter that we chose for y-intercept. It's just kind of the way it is. I don't know why. Okay, but that vocab there, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, you could probably go home and ask your parents, and they remember learning this when they were in school, because you're going to see it a lot. Okay, so the equation for line Q is shown in slope-intercept form. That is right here, y equals 10x plus 100. You can see they have the slope in blue, or m is in blue, and then the y-intercept, or b, is in red there. Okay, it says write the equation for line P in slope-intercept form, and then circle the slope and underline the y-intercept. This should be a pretty similar equation, but I want you to take a second with your partner and go ahead and do that for me as well once you get the video paused on this, if I can get my video to work properly. Sorry about that. All right, pause the video. All right, guys, on number three, so our equation for line P in slope-intercept form is y equals 10x plus 0. Okay, so where that comes from, if we look back, way back here up at the graph, right? And I guess you can do either one, right? But if we look at the graph, we had y equals 10x was our equation in our direct variation form, I guess, right? We had that right here. All we do for slope-intercept form is we just make sure that we add in the y-intercept. So if we look at the y-intercept, this is the same graph here. Our y-intercept is 0. Okay, so all we're doing there is adding 0 right there for b. Okay, it says to circle the slope and underline the y-intercept. I just did underline the y-intercept. Right here is the slope circled. Okay, once again, your slope is going to be attached to the x value. Okay, make sure you don't get those two mixed up. That's really important. Okay, that is it for number 3. If we look at number 4, you can also use the slope formula to derive the slope-intercept form of a linear equation. Use the slope formula to find the slope between 0b, the y-intercept of the line, and xy, any other point on the line, then solve for y. Okay, that is a lot that it's kind of asking you to do there on number 4. So here's what you're going to do. Just like we did in our last lesson where we used the slope formula. Reminder, that's y2 minus y1.
Elizabeth Rose.
Sorry about that. We got announcements while I'm making the video. You're going to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. Again, that's your slope formula, as we've talked about. And then your two ordered pairs that it gives you are 0b. Let me get my highlighter. There we go. 0b and xy. And those are the 2 points you're going to use. Okay, so I want you to set up that slope formula to start and then solve for the slope. So start with that and then go ahead and pause the video while you do that. Simplify it as far as you can, and then you can unpause to kind of see where I'm at with that. All right, so I've got here on number 4 probably as far as you were maybe able to make it. If you didn't make it this far, that's okay, because this is kind of a difficult thing that it's asking you to do. So you can see I kind of forgot to give you the m equals there. So good for you if you figured that part out. But you should have m equals y minus b over x minus 0. That's just using your slope formula. Okay. Then we can simplify by having x minus 0 equals the x right here. And then I just flipped the m equals to the other side because you've got the same thing there, right? There's no difference between those two. Okay, the next step, I'll just go ahead and finish this off with you, is going to be to multiply both sides by x, just like we kind of did in our last section of notes. And the reason is we cancel out the x here. All right, you may remember doing that. So now I would have y minus b equals mx. And then the last step is we want to isolate y. So we're going to add b to both sides. And that will give us y cancels out equals mx plus b. And there's the full equation. Okay, that's our full slope-intercept form equation. All right, so that's kind of where the equation y equals mx plus b comes from. That's your derivation. It's okay if we can't do that on our own. We're just kind of seeing where it comes from. All right. Last one here on this page, number 5. Reflect. Think about all the models and strategies you have discussed today. Describe how one of them helped you better understand. We're actually going to skip that one. Okay, so you don't need to worry about doing number 5 for right now. And then we're going to finish up. This has been a long video. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of I'm going to give you homework basically, but it's going to be pretty quick. Shouldn't be too bad. It's just kind of going to be in place of this reflect question. So here's what I want you to do. You can work with the person that you've been working with, but I want you to answer just the following little things. If you have room on your book page, you can do it on your book page. If you need to use a different sheet of paper and just kind of tuck it in your book to look at next class, we're going to look over it together, but make sure you answer all the questions that I give you because I am going to ask kind of at random for the answers to those questions. So everybody in class needs to know the answers to all of these questions. So make sure you've got them written down. First question, I'm going to call it A. First thing I want to know is what is slope-intercept form? Okay, what is slope-intercept form? And I'm wanting the equation itself. So I want you to give me what slope-intercept form looks like. You can find it in this page, like literally on this page that I'm displaying on the screen right now. You should be able to find it. Okay, that's the first one. The second question that I want you to answer, what does M stand for? Okay, what does the letter M stand for? The third question I want you to answer, what does B stand for? Okay, and then the last question that I want you to answer is what is a y-intercept? So kind of in your own words, what is a y-intercept? All right, and that is going to be it. Okay, so once you've answered all four of these questions, you are good to go for today. And I will see you guys in class next time. We'll talk about those four questions there. So again, make sure you've got everything you need. You're ready to go with that. And you're good from there. So see you guys in class.